Hello. Today, we will be going over the vehicles submitted by the SCIDS Discord for the Sprocket competition which I held. There are multiple requirements that the vehicles must fulfill. These requirements are a weight that does not exceed 50 tons, a top speed of at least 50 kilometers per hour, a minimum range of at least 300 kilometers, and a ditch cross capability of 2 meters. The offensive armaments of the tank must include a minimum 120mm gun and a minimum of one anti-infantry weapon for self-defense. The required armor values are as follows. For the front, minimum effectiveness of 160mm, for the sides, 100mm of effective armor, and for the rear, 75mm of effective armor. Vehicles may exceed the requirements or fail to meet them, however this will be accounted for in the final score. Another factor that will be taken into account in the final score of the vehicle are any cosmetic items or any other design choices that don't necessarily add anything combat-wise but make the tank look better. The vehicles presented are in no particular order. The final order will be announced at the end. And with that, let's get into it. The first vehicle on the list is Woods People's Vigorous Turtle, coming in at 43 tons with a top speed of 41 kilometers per hour. It satisfies the weight requirement, however, it fails on the speed requirement. The overall detail of the tank is pretty adequate. As you can see, some of the pioneering tools do phase through the commander's cupola. The turret has an escape panel for both the commander and the gunner, as well as stowages for their belongings, external fuel, rear hatches for engine maintenance, as well as miscellaneous panels around, a tail light for night operations, two low-mounted exhausts, a escape hatch on the bottom for the driver, however no entry hatch from the top. The rear of the vehicle is missing towing connections, which makes recovery from the rear impossible. All sides of the tank meet the armor specification requirements. Overall, the detail of the tank is a little bit plain. However, it does have a few positives going for it. First of all, road wheel maintenance would be extremely easy, as there are only 4 road wheels. However, these road wheels are quite large and would be quite heavy to remove with pioneering tools and might require some machinery. The tank is also quite small, so the material cost for these tanks would be quite cheap compared to other designs. The anti-infantry armament is also quite good. The vehicle also has radio antennas, so communication via radio is possible. The tank also has a quite high ground clearance, making traversal of obstacles quite easy. The tracks are a little bit exposed without any additional armor on them whatsoever. However, this doesn't seem like it would be a problem as the tank is pretty fast. The mantlet might pose an issue as it sticks out quite a bit. Overall, a very solid design. Next up is Explorize's Zayden Monk. I'm not sure where to even begin with this design. Now, on paper, all of the specs are very good. However, when you look at the cosmetic side of the tank itself, that's where things start to fall apart quite heavily. But before we get into that, let's go over the technicalities of the tank. This tank comes in at 49.8 tons, so just below the maximum weight requirement. The top speed, however, suffers at 35 kilometers an hour. However, this may be due to a recent update to the game. The armor far exceeds the requirements set out by the program. However, the side rear of the turret fails the side armor requirement, coming in at only around 76 millimeters. The gun exceeds the requirement, coming at 125 millimeters. The clearance of the tank is amazing, much like with Wood People's design. Now into a bit of a problem area of the tank. The cosmetics. There are many problems with the cosmetics of the tank. First of all, the crew hatch placements on the front of the tank are impossible. They are over the sponsons. There is physically not enough space for the crew members to fit. Also, the front driver's viewport means that the driver would have to be lying down flat on the tank to drive it. Same thing with the bow machine gunner on the right side of the tank. There is no entry position for the gunner of the tank, so if there is an emergency, the gunner cannot escape the tank easily. There is, however, a fume extractor. The tank does have a radio antenna for communication. There is a rear stowage for the crew's personal belongings, engine hatches for maintenance, rear marker lights, as well as towing points. There are no pioneering tools whatsoever on the tank, making maintenance in the field impossible. The road wheel size are absolutely massive, so they have the exact same problem as the design from Woods people. There is also no escape hatches whatsoever on the tank, making crew survivability a problem. There is, however, spare link track in the front of the tank, which adds to its armor value. However, since no pioneering tools exist on the outside of the tank, it would be impossible to replace any damaged links. Stat-wise, it is a very impressive tank. However, the cosmetics makes it very cursed indeed. Next up, we have the Mark 34 tier, created by Magnus. This Norwegian design came into being during World War II in order to prepare for a possible German invasion. It was used in a limited capacity. The US and UK also purchased a few for their own service. Coming in at 64.5 tons, this behemoth doesn't let its large weight stop it from achieving 49 kilometers an hour on flat surfaces. Its 120mm gun allows it to penetrate 180mm of armor. It has a reload rate of 13.38 seconds. The tank greatly satisfies the armor requirement, with armor as thick as 500mm in some spots on the front. However, the side rear of the turret fails, with only 80mm of the expected 100. The cosmetics of the tank are very beautiful. The side of the tank has tons of spare tracks to replace any damaged links. The added armor and armored panels really add to the aesthetic of the tank. The detail on the driver's cupola is very good. The detail on the turret is amazing, with multiple radio antennas, pioneering tools, and other various equipment needed. The commander gets his own machine gun. The gunner also has a cupola for additional target acquisition. The tank has many periscopes to help in spawning targets. Additionally, it has tons of stowage, as well as a log to help if the tank gets stuck. The tank has towing points, it has lights for night operation, however it does not have any escape hatch for the driver, and the front towing points are hard to reach. However, this may be intentional as the armor on the front has been added on by the crew. Overall, I love the look of the tank. It looks very authentic, and the detail is amazing. Now we have Hams, which, surprisingly, first impressions are not that bad. So his tank, which he calls the Not a STRV-301, comes in under the weight limit at 48.38 tons, with a top speed of 40.5 kilometers per hour. I feel bad saying this, but this is Ham. On a technical level, this tank is a complete failure, which to his credit, he does actually admit in his submission. So, the gun has terrible penetration, only 135. The armor all around the tank is too low except for the front, where it is an adequate amount of over 500mm. On the topic of armor, the front has quite a large weak spot on the flat portion, as well as there being other noticeable weak spots such as the rear and the sides of the vehicle. It's not a complete flop, however, because cosmetically the tank mostly holds up other than a few small parts which I'll shortly point out. The vehicle comes equipped with all of the tools you would need in the field, so pioneering tools and other miscellaneous tools you would need. The tank comes with 2 machine guns, however the top machine gun appears as if the person operating it would need to be lying down on the tank, which I can't see as being too comfortable or even quite feasible or even safe. Now, because of the placement of all of the ports, it appears that this tank is supposed to be crewed by 5 people. However, that doesn't make much sense because there are only 2 hatches. Now, the reason why I say this is because you have the driver's port on the right side of the tank, you have a gunner's sight in the middle, and this machine gun on the left here. Now, I can't believe that this machine gun is controlled by the driver, or that the tank is also shot by the driver, because the ports are not in the same proximity of each other. And that would also mean that in order to get in and out of these positions, you need to travel the length of the tank from the inside, which stands without question that is terrible in emergencies. Speaking of which, there are no emergency exits on the tank whatsoever, so if it goes up, you're fucked. There are a few smaller things here and there, like no rear towing, so you can't recover it from the rear, and the stowage leaves a lot to be desired, but overall the tank isn't bad. Next up, we have the AV 123120 Scout, submitted by Pirate Jake 2000. Now, this design has very clearly decided to completely ignore the armor requirements, coming in only at 30 tons with a top speed of 55 kilometers an hour. The only part of this tank that actually fulfills the armor requirement is the front of the tank. Even though this tank completely fails with its armor, that doesn't mean that this tank fails completely. This tank has a very low profile, an amazing ground clearance, as well as an amazing attention to detail. The gun is also nothing to laugh at with almost 190 millimeters of penetration, which puts it on the same level as the tier, except it's only half the weight and a smaller visual profile. Cosmetic wise, this tank is very beautiful. Other than a few small things here and there. First of all, I assume this is supposed to be a driver's hatch with a periscope on top. The position of the periscope would make the depression of the gun very, very low when pointing directly forwards. The two secondary periscopes on either side of the driver are quite out of the way and would probably be very hard to look at while inside. There is no escape hatch for the driver on the bottom of the tank. There is a lot of miscellaneous panels, as well as pioneering tools and tow cables dotted around the tank. Two massive radiator fans on the top, as well as radio equipment and marker lights, rear towing lugs, and engine maintenance as well as the exhausts. A large door on the rear, which is presumably either a ammo loading hatch or escape hatch, as well as a small cupola for the commander and another periscope for the gunner, as well as a machine gun for each, and good attention to detail for the two lugs on the top of the tank, which would be used to lower the turret onto the vehicle. Overall, the tank is pretty flat. There's not much going on, but very good attention to detail, where all of the things you'd expect a tank to have, such as maintenance panels for the transmission and etc., are actually there on the tank. And lastly, we have Sir Murtax's design, which has apparently been stolen by the Chinese from a old Soviet factory. This tank, weighing in at 50 tons, with a very, very low top speed of around 30 kilometers per hour, satisfies most of the armor demands. The front is good. The sides are satisfactory, where the main turret has quite a high amount of armor, however the lower area where the road wheels are is about only 80. The rear completely fails at 10 on the turret and 75 on the main body, which is adequate. Visually, this tank is absolutely beautiful. It's got tons of attention to detail, and you can tell that a lot of love was put into it. We'll start from the front. This tank actually does have a door for the driver, so that's a good start. The lights have bars going around them to protect them, as well as using some of the extra parts to add some detail to the light fixtures. Pioneering tools are on the front, as well as spare track. More spare track on the turret in a logical area. However, it is weird that the track goes through the gunner sight. A good use of one of the storage parts in order to make a different shape to the mantlet. Nice use of the lights to add on what would be presumably a spotlight or a IR spotlight. Two additional periscopes up top for the crew inside the turret to use. Armored up extra storage on the sides. Good attention to detail on the rear ports of the turret. A machine gun that can be used by either the gunner or the commander. More pioneering tools on the rear of the tank. A very nice engine deck, marker lights integrated with tow rungs, as well as the exhausts, extra fuel, some extra flaps, as well as supports for the fuel tanks. There is no escape hatch for the driver, and the tank has adequate ground clearance as well, so overall very beautiful tank. Those were all 6 designs which were submitted, and I will now talk about the ranking. So I'll be starting with the worst and then moving up to the number 1 position. In last place is Ham's design. This is because not only does it pretty much fail everything except frontal armor, it's also just a very awkward design in terms of usability and layout. Next up, we have Explorerizes in 5th place. And this is because mostly of its very cursed design in terms of the entrance for the crew in the front of the tank, as well as the operating positions for them. Next up, we have Woods in 4th place. This decision was hard to make in between Woods and Pirates, because the tanks are quite similar in the roles that they play. However, the deciding factor was the fact that Pirates' design had a much better turret design in terms of mechanical. The turret on Pirate's design turns very, very quickly, which is very good for a tank that moves very quick, and a tank that is a scout tank like his. In 3rd place, we have Pirate's design. Again, very similar to Woods. However, because his turret can turn faster, that was a deciding factor to put it in 3rd place over 4th. And lastly, we have 1st and 2nd place. Now, it was very hard to choose a winner for this this one. Both designs are beautiful. Both designs mostly fulfill the requirements. However, number one has to go to Magnus simply because his design, while overweight, does meet the armor and speed requirements, and the amount of work and detail put into the tank is absolutely staggering. But Sir Murtax and his design comes in a very, very, very close second, and they are both beautiful tanks. I'd like to once again thank everyone for participating, and I hope you have a good day.